This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in San Diego County today, joined by Todd Gloria, a new member of the California State Assembly. And when you ran for the Assembly in June of 2016, it didn't matter if you got 50% plus one. You had to go to a general election. San Diego City now has that. It doesn't matter if you get 50% plus one. The top two go to a general. What about the county?
So the county's an outlier. That's not the way it works. So for really almost every other election, president, governor, mayor, you have a primary election and a general election. But that's not the case for our county supervisors. And our supervisors are really important people. You know, they work on issues of public health, disaster recovery, road repair. And these are the kinds of decisions that are currently being made with a very small part of the electorate in June, rather than the very large turnout that we have in November. I'm now offering legislation that would align the county's elections to match those of the city, state, and federal government. It would reduce voter confusion and ensure that more people are a part of the decision-making process at the county level, just as they are at all other levels of government.
But what about the expense? I mean, if you do get 50% plus one, that does say that a majority of voters support you. I understand that turnout is lower, but arguably it's a little paternalistic, you know, to say, well, we got to put it in November. Help me.
Well, the expense is relatively nominal, and actually our legislation says that, you know, if you actually only have two candidates who apply, you can skip the primary and just go to the general. And so that is a way to try and help folks save money if that's the concern. But again, the truth of the matter is that those elections in November are going to be held anyway. Right? Because you're going to have all the rest of those elections on the ballot. The individual ballot question is usually something of a few $1,000s or a couple $10,000. I think that that's a minor expense to make sure that 60-70% of the public can weigh in, as opposed to the 20 or 30% that show up in the June election.
Now, why is this before Sacramento? Could San Diego County make that decision themselves, or is it a state issue?
My legislation gives them the authority to do this, and they do need the state's authority to do that. At which point the County Board of Supervisors can make the decision, or the voters can make the decision. Well, we're not capable of doing that. So this is authorizing to do this. I hope that the Board of Supervisors would see that more people means better decisions. But if they don't choose to do that, you can have a citizens initiative to accomplish it, just as the city of San Diego did.
I want to ask you about how lines are drawn. As you know, in the state of California, as a result of citizens initiatives, back in, I think, 08 and 10, I think around then, we draw our lines, our political lines, through a commission.
Correct.
It's not a political process, a nonpartisan commission. How does that work in San Diego County? Who draws the lines?
So we have a small group of retired judges that do it. And so there's a companion piece of legislation. My bill is the top two runoff bill. Assemblymember Shirley Weber has a bill
also from this county.
Also from San Diego County, would allow a citizens commission, very similar to what we have at the state, more closely like what we have at the city, where you invite folks from all political stripes, all portions of the community, to have a more diverse background. We love our judges, but the truth of the matter is a very small group of 3 judges does not reflect the entirety of a 3 million person county. And what we have now are districts that are interesting in that if you looked at them on a map, they look a bit unusual.
Yeah, one could say.
And so what we, and the truth is, when the lines are drawn, they look unusual just kind of anyway. But I think that the imprint of the public, of having a citizens commission to do this, really says that this is a participatory democracy. And what I love right now, despite all the concerns that folks have at the national level, there is a higher level of civic interest than I've ever seen before.
Indeed.
And both of these bills really are about empowering citizens in this democracy to participate. Let's take this energy that's out there and make sure that it's involved at the level of government that's most intimate to them. The county government impacts the lives of every San Diegan every single day, and we want to make sure they have a bigger voice in that process.
And so through this piece of legislation, does it require that San Diego County adopt a broader commission, or again, it's enabling them to do it?
Well, with Dr. Weber's bill, that is more prescriptive. So they must do that. Mine is going to be a longer process, but one that ultimately I think will be successful.
I want to speak with you about a recent honor that was bestowed on Assemblyman Gloria, and that is you have been named to be the chairperson of the Assembly Select Committee on Housing Affordability for the middle and working class. Boy, is this needed today. I mean, it is undeniable that, look, we have an affordable housing crisis, but we're focused on housing that is affordable. You know this better than I. California homes cost 2.5 times greater than the national average. And if we look at coastal counties, like San Diego, forget it.
That's right.
Forget it. So talk to me about the committee.
Brad, you're on the money where this is concerned. And what has been interesting to me, San Diego has some of the highest housing costs that's out there. And my committee is trying to address a part of the housing segment that I don't think is often discussed in Sacramento, in city halls, and elsewhere. This is not about subsidized housing. Right. This is about housing affordability. This is housing that folks who have jobs can afford. Subsidized housing is very important.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing is very important for the disabled, for the homeless, for folks on fixed income, seniors, and others. But what I'm increasingly hearing from my constituents is that they can have very well-paying jobs, and yet they can't afford to live here.
But here's my question, if I may. What can government do with market rate housing? Because by definition, the market determines, look, the federal government has impact because of interest rates, for example.
Correct.
But what can the state government do?
Well, that's a part of what the committee is intending to do. I want to spend the next year exploring this issue in depth and trying to find where the solutions are. Some things that come to mind is to remove certain barriers to construction that currently exist,
barriers, right.
And that they increase the overall cost of housing. Here's the trick, though, is that as we remove those barriers and perhaps allow more inventory means the prices hopefully come down. Right. What I want to hear is that if we make some of those efforts, which I think we generally should, that is actually reflected in the price and that those dollars don't just flow into the developers' pockets. I'm all about capitalism. Allow people to make a profit by all means. But let's make sure that if we reduce some of the efforts, if we streamline certain things to make more product get on the market sooner and hopefully help more working families out, that they actually see that reflected in the rents and in the for sale prices. We don't always see that in the areas where we have seen streamlining.
I want to ask you though, last summer, I know you weren't in the legislature yet, but Governor Brown had proposed some regulatory reforms in the affordable housing area, not in this area. And cities like San Diego were really the League of California Cities ball. They felt as if it was an incursion on their authority. So this becomes a little dicey. I'm wondering how you create an atmosphere where we can get Sacramento reform that the locals like.
Well, again, I think this is where this committee can do. As we hold hearings across the state and in communities all across California, we may be able to develop a consensus that wasn't there when Governor Brown proposed this. I think what's interesting, Brad, is that my colleagues up and down the state, rural, urban, coastal, or central, everyone's experiencing this problem. So that says to me that there's opportunity. And yes, we have heard the concerns from the League of California Cities and others about whether or not the state should have a role in this. But here's the thing. If they don't act, someone must, because this inaction means that more families are struggling to make ends meet. And while I've always been concerned about the low-income families in our communities, the truth is I'm having middle-class families come to me and say something must be done. And I, rather than lament this, I see this as opportunity. What I see is a coalition that's broad enough to get something big done. And if the cities can't act, I think the state must. The end result is that we have to have a vibrant economy, and we cannot do it if we only have the very wealthy and the very poor able to find housing. What we have to help is that middle class that keeps this economic engine, what is the 5th or 6th largest in the world, working.
In our final moments, I want to talk about the vaquita.
Yes.
What's the vaquita? And I understand it's in serious risk of extinction.
It is. This was an issue that I was unaware of, but some folks may know my district actually touches the U.S.-Mexican border. The vaquita, or little cow in Spanish, is one of the world's smallest marine mammals. It's found exclusively in the Gulf of California, and there's only about 30 left. 30? In the whole world? In the whole world. Oof. So it's on the edge of extinction, and this is largely due to illegal fishing. Now, granted, this is in Mexican waters, but a large part of the market for the fishing that is done there, they're not trying to capture the vaquita. The vaquita is just a byproduct or a bycatch. And so what we want to do is cut off that supply. Mexican law already makes it illegal to do some of this behavior, but the enforcement is not always there. Going back to the housing thing, we want to address the market demands for this and say that if you are doing illegal fishing practices in the Gulf of California, you can't sell that product here. Our hope is that will save the vaquita.
And we'll have you back. He is Assemblyman Todd Gloria. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Local Edition.